Hello, everyone. Thanks for joining me tonight. I am very excited to be doing this Facebook Live tonight with my good friend and client. I have trained both of her dogs, Tayef, who is the foster coordinator for Second Chance Rescue New York City. And we are going to be talking about dog fostering, behavior issues that pop up in foster dogs, and any questions that you might have about this topic. You can go ahead and throw them into the chat. We do have a whole bunch of questions that were pre-submitted, so thank you for that. We're going to try to work through all of those. Tayef is in these pictures here with some foster dogs and with her own personal dog, Munchie, in that bottom picture, Munchie Browns. So I am going to bring her up now and let her do a little introduction. Hello.
Hi. Thanks for having me.
So happy to be here. Why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself a little bit, and then we will dive right into the questions because we have a lot of them.
Yeah, so I think some of the people on here probably have texted with me or Facebook messaged at some point or the other. I've been volunteering with Second Chance Rescue for 3 years now. I started as a foster, and after failing with Munchie Browns, I became a foster coordinator. So right now I organize where the dogs are going once they land in New York or up north. And yeah, try to just get the best homes for them until they're adopted. So Great. That's what I do currently at the rescue.
How many dogs do you typically have in foster with your organization?
So right now we have approximately 80 dogs in foster homes. That includes our hospice and some of our medical cases. So yeah, and that's why, I mean, we're foster based. We really rely on our foster homes and families to take in more dogs. And so that's kind of how we're able to rescue more.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah, John and I, my husband is behind the scenes. He runs tech for us during these Facebook Lives. So John and I did a lot of fostering many, many years ago. We were volunteers with a rescue based on New Jersey when we lived there. And in about a year and a half, little under 2 years, we did over 50 dogs. So we joked that our home was Grand Central Station for puppies. It was before I was a trainer. So it was actually one of the things that led me. I had just enrolled in the Academy for Dog Trainers, and we were fostering. And it was actually really great because I was able to hone some of my early training skills on all these puppies kind of coming through our home constantly. So we haven't fostered in a few years. We have older dogs now, and they're just not quite as tolerant as they used to be of lots of dogs coming in and out. But yeah, fostering is super important. It's, it is definitely a way to help save more lives because lots of rescue organizations don't have a facility like a shelter to house these dogs. So those foster homes are those temporary homes to get the dogs pulled out of the, often southern shelters and brought up north where they have a greater chance to get adopted. And I know that Second Chance pulls a lot from down south.
Yeah. We do. I mean, we pull from down south, but then there's always the steady stream of emergencies we pull from around the New York area, and it's constant. So especially around any holidays or long weekends, it just never ends. So
if you're in the New York area, certainly you can check out Second Chance, but if you're not, I encourage you to find a local rescue close to you if you are interested in fostering. Almost every rescue is always looking for foster homes because the more foster homes they have, the more dogs they're able to save.
And just to add to that, Kate, we do allow fosters 4 hours from the New York area. So, if you're also in the vicinity, we definitely apply. So
great. That is good to know. Yeah. Okay, so let's dive into our questions. The first one we're going to tackle came from Nicole on Facebook, and then we had a similar question by email. So Nicole was asking, how do you introduce foster dogs to your personal dogs? And then the sort of similar question that we got was, what's the safest way to introduce foster dogs to resident dogs? When can you do that? And then I'll deal with some follow-up questions to that. So first and foremost, I have a blog post that I wrote a couple of years ago about bringing home a new dog I did it right around the holidays because so many people tend to add dogs around the holidays. They got a new dog for Christmas or whatever. So that post is really about bringing in a new dog to an existing home, but there are a lot of really good points, whether the dog is a foster dog or not, in that blog post. So I encourage you to read that. We're going to put that link in the chat for you guys. I think a lot of organizations, and certainly you can chime in here, have rules about how integrated they want their foster dogs to be with resident dogs. If you're just fostering for a day or two, it may not really be worth the effort to try to fully integrate. Certainly, if the foster has any medical issues, kennel cough, or anything like that, you're not going to want to integrate. You're going to want to do as much separation as possible. Certainly, slow, steady introductions. The absolute worst thing you could do is just throw the foster dog into your home with your existing dogs and see what happens and hope for the best. Even if your personal dogs are great with other dogs and super social, they go to the dog park or they go to daycare, a lot of times the rescues don't have enough history on the fosters to know how well social they are with other dogs. And we also, I think it's a good opportunity to talk a little bit about decompression and whenever you move a dog from one place to another, so the dog comes off transport or comes out of a shelter, or even from a foster home to an adoptive home, that dog is going to go through a period of adjustment, settling into their new environment, getting used to their new people. And so I really encourage people for the first week at least to keep it really chill, not have a lot of people coming in and out, not bringing the dog everywhere to introduce them to everybody, and really getting that dog comfortable in those new surroundings with those new people, because it's easy for us to forget because we're all excited. We have a new dog, we have a new foster, that we are complete strangers to this dog, and this dog has been transported and bounced around and does not know which end is up. So that's kind of my behavioral take on introducing foster dogs. Certainly, if you're going to have a long-term foster, a medical foster, or something like that, there's going to be special circumstances that go with that. If it's a medical foster, it may need to be on quiet crate rest or, limited walks. And you definitely don't want to introduce a medical case like that to a young, enthusiastic dog that's going to try to play with that dog. But if you plan on having that foster for a couple weeks, then you may want to figure out a way to integrate them, especially if it's hard for you to do some degree of separation. But you can always do a crate and rotate system where one dog is, confined, or you're using a baby gate or an X pen. And so the dogs are in their own spaces, but, out, they're not being isolated. They're still out and around, but not fully integrated in the same room. Do you want to add anything to that?
I mean, I think you summed it up perfectly. We really emphasize the importance of decompression and, taking 2 weeks at least to just have the dogs sort of be separated, supervised, and then introducing, like you said, parallel walks and create and rotate. There's really no reason to, when people are overexcited and just want to integrate really quickly. So for sure, the more you take your time and just let the dog have their breathing room. And also, I like to emphasize the importance that decompression is also for your dog at home, and slow introductions is just as important for the purpose of your dog getting used to a new dog coming into their home.
Yeah.
So yeah. Sorry, I think I'm freezing a little bit maybe, but yeah. So we just like to stress the importance of that. It's very. The dog has just experienced a very long transportation trip, and so keeping that in mind as well.
Yeah. Yep. And you mentioned parallel walks. There is a really good video from my friend who owns Bravo Dog, and she has a really great video on YouTube about doing parallel walks and meet and greets for new dogs. So John can throw that up in the chat as well. So if you are getting to the point where you want to slowly introduce the dogs, doing these parallel walks, meaning the dogs are on leash, but they're at a safe distance and they're slowly getting closer and closer and closer. We're not just, like I said, throwing them in and seeing what happens. If you don't have a big open field, like you'll see in the video, she's out in a big open field. She's got lots of space. If you're in New York City and you maybe don't have the luxury of that, doing a similar process, even on a sidewalk where you've got 2 dogs and 2 humans. The dogs are on the outside. So it's dog, human, human, dog. And you walk like that for a little bit and then you rotate one of the dogs in. So then it's dog, human, walk like that for a little bit, you know, letting the dogs sniff each other's pee and poop when they go, or sort of trail behind them and get a little butt sniff in, and then kind of rotate positions so that they can alternate that. And then if that seems to be going well, you do one final rotation. So now the humans are on the outside. So it's human, dog, dog, human, and walk like that for a little bit. And you don't necessarily need to do all those rotations in a single outing, in a single walk. You could do, you know, the dogs on the outside and walk for a little bit and then do some separation for the rest of the day. And then the next day, try that again to try to more closely integrate them. Certainly, and this is covered in my blog post, you know, anything that could potentially be a resource, food, chews, toys, people, resting spots like dog beds or couches. You want to be really, really careful that the dogs are not going to be competing for resources in those situations. So new dog, adoptive dog, or foster dog, I always urge a lot of caution when having dogs, you know, eat next to each other or chewing on bones in the same space. There can be resource guarding there, and resource guarding is completely normal for dogs to do. That doesn't mean that any dog is bad dog if they do it, but we want to keep people and dogs safe. There was a comment I saw that came in on the chat a little while ago from Paula about she's fostered before for Second Chance, and she would like to foster again, but she's had some issues with one of the dogs sort of going after the other dog. And that is common. I would kind of dig into that a little bit and find out, was there resources there? You know, just because you have a dog that has had some history with other dogs, if there weren't really serious injuries, meaning the other dog didn't need stitches or shaving or antibiotics, dogs squabble, dogs fight. That's how they work things out. So as long as it's really not injurious, I wouldn't label that dog as, no, I can't have other dogs in here. It may just require a higher degree of management in that situation. So Paul, I think you could talk to the rescue and see if that's an option. If you're really diligent about management and keeping separation, using baby gates and things like that, and managing resources, I think there is still a possibility that that could work. Certainly the rescue needs to make that decision, whether they feel it's safe or not. But I personally wouldn't label that as a deal killer there.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, we always recommend, even when dogs are friendly in the home and people know their dogs and they tell me, oh, they're super social, they're friends with every dog that comes into our home, they don't have any known guarding history, we still emphasize the importance of separating any resources. So feeding in the crate or behind a pet gate. It's so easy. There's no reason not to do it and be safe.
Right. Yeah, exactly. Okay. Next question that came in was from email saying, this person's a new foster. What should I expect in the first 24 hours after bringing home a new dog? I think we touched on this a little bit, but really giving that dog a chance to decompress and not having any expectations of that dog. So I usually even recommend suspending leash walks if that's possible. So if you have a backyard or you have some sort of space, to not expect this new dog, especially if they've come from down south and they're being thrust into Manhattan or Brooklyn and it's a busy area, lots of noises and things that they may not have been exposed to previously. That can be really overwhelming, especially coming off the heels of a transport. So not expecting long walks, do short relief outings, to give them an opportunity. If it's a small dog and you can get away with potty pads. If they seem like they're not comfortable going outside, certainly that would be an option, but not really having lots of expectations for the dog to be super social with you or want to hang out with you or want to be close to you. You know, these dogs are a little shell shocked when they come out of transport or come out of a bad, you know, shelter situation. So we really want to give them as much time and space as they need to come out of their shell on their own. And us trying to force that interaction could actually be detrimental, especially if it's a little fearful dog. You know, us reaching to try to pet them, you know, dogs don't understand intention. So we think, oh, I'm going to reach and pet you and show you that I'm not any threat to you. But that act of reaching and invading the dog's space, if they're a little unsure about you, then that is a threat. That's a perceived threat from the dog's perspective. You have comments about that?
Well, yeah, I mean, everything you said, and I always like to prepare my new fosters that the first, you know, 24 hours, maybe 48 hours are going to be the hardest. You just need to kind of be open to that experience because, yeah, I mean, the dogs might be anxious, they might be afraid, and you might put them in the crate and they're going to start whining and barking. And, you know, that's the other most common thing where it's like, what do I do? Do I let them out? You know, stick with it, be consistent, let them sort of mess up and just be what they want to be for the first couple of days until they settle in and learn what they're supposed to do.
Yeah.
That's kind of.
Yep. And also that disruption in routine and the stress from everything that they've been through can also affect their appetite and their pottying, their housebreaking. And so even if a dog was previously housebroken, I would also expect within the first few days potty accidents. Even if the dog goes when you take him outside, he still may also go when he's inside. You may have loose bowel movements just from the anxiety. Certainly, you know, that affects humans too. If you're really stressed, you might not have, you know, as regular movements as you normally do. Or they may not be very interested in food because they're a little anxious and worried about what's going on. So not freaking out if the dog doesn't eat right away, but certainly monitoring that and being in communication to make sure that there isn't an underlying medical issue going on there. But it's sort of to be expected when dogs come off of transport that, you know, they may have some diarrhea or some digestive issues.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
Okay. Next question. Similar to that, I want to socialize my foster dog. Can I take him to the dog park and keep him on a leash for safety? So I will jump on this. Going to the dog park with an unknown quantity dog is generally not advised. That's the first thing. Going to a dog park where dogs are running off leash and keeping a dog on leash is a recipe for disaster. Mixing on and off leash dogs is a terrible idea. If you think about it from the dog's perspective, the dog that's on leash is trapped. They have 6 feet of leash. If they feel threatened, they can't avoid, they can't escape, they can't, you know, move freely. And if they're at the dog park and all these other dogs are rushing up to them, that dog really has no escape other than to snap or snarl or bark or act in some sort of aggressive way to get those other dogs to move away, to create space, because that dog is feeling, you know, cornered. Taking a dog to a dog park that you have just, you know, taken possession of, and you don't know that dog's play history with unfamiliar dogs, the dog park can be a wonderful place to take dogs, but it can also be really overwhelming for some dogs. And so taking a dog who's come off of transport, who's stressed and maybe a little anxious, and then throwing them into a dog park with, you know, 30 or 50 dogs that they've never met before and in a sort of free-for-all, uncontrolled environment may not be the best idea. I don't know if Second Chance has rules about this, but the rescue that we worked with did not allow for foster dogs to go to dog parks.
Yeah, similar. Same actually. Second Chance does not allow foster dogs to go to the dog park. Dog runs, no exceptions, and it's exactly for those reasons. But yeah, especially bringing your dog leashed even if you're not at the dog run, in my opinion, like sometimes a lot of, for example, Prospect Park have off-leash hours for their dogs at certain times.
Yeah.
So no, that's not okay either, because you have all these dogs, you know, jumping around and maybe trying to sniff your foster dog. And we really don't know what's going to trigger the foster dog, or even, you know, the dogs off leash that are running around. Unfortunately, a lot of dogs are not, a lot of owners don't know their dogs that well, and we can never predict the behavior. So things do happen and things have happened. So we really caution against that.
Yep. And, you know, you mentioned Prospect Park. Central Park has the same thing in New York City where, you know, before 9 a.m. it's off leash hours. Just another thing that seems obvious to me, but you don't want your foster dog off leash at any point in an unconfined area. So even if your foster dog is following you around the house and seems to be glued to your hip, that dog does not have a trained recall and has no real bond to you. And there is no reason that dog will come to you when you call them. So I'm sure most rescues have rules about that, but I just wanted to point out that, you know, taking the dog to an off-leash park or you know, having them off-leash at a certain point is still not a good idea. And I am not against dog parks. I'm pro dog parks for your personal dogs that you know and who have been well socialized and are good in those environments. But I am not pro dog park to have you take an unknown quantity dog into a situation where that dog could hurt other dogs or be hurt by those dogs.
And just to add to that, I mean, always think of the sort of risk that if something happens while this dog is in your care, this bite is going to go on their record, or this squabble is going to go on their record. And, you know, we can just avoid that by being safe. It's unnecessary.
Yeah. And any dog that has a bite history or any sort of negative play interaction, that's going to make it a more challenging adoption later on. So if your goal as a foster is to help these dogs find good permanent homes, we don't want to set them up with a bite history trying to get them adopted. You mentioned this before. This is the next question. I think my foster dog might have separation anxiety. She whines and barks in her crate when I leave her alone. What should I do? You mentioned like putting the dog in the crate and they might whine or whatever. So I have a blog post about puppies and separation anxiety. There's a lot of similarities between puppies and some foster dogs. So when we look at figuring out whether a dog has separation anxiety or not, there's certain things that we look for. Certainly vocalizing is one of the characteristics that we look for diagnosing separation anxiety. House training accidents, you know, not peeing and pooping outside can be a marker for separation anxiety. Destruction can be a marker for separation anxiety. But those things also happen with dogs that don't have separation anxiety. They happen often with puppies. They happen with dogs who are new rescues, maybe who are in a new environment, like a foster dog. So just because the dog is doing those things doesn't automatically mean that they have separation anxiety. The caveat here is she barks in her crate when I leave her alone. So even that by itself is not indicative of separation anxiety, because we haven't ruled out the possibility of confinement anxiety. Maybe that dog has never been in a crate. Maybe that dog has not been properly crate trained, and that's why they're barking in the crate. And a lot of people put dogs in crates or confine them when they go to leave, and then they jump to the conclusion that the dog has separation anxiety because they've put the dog in a crate and they've left and now the dog is barking. Instead of ruling out whether the dog has been properly crate trained and is truly comfortable in the crate, including absences, versus the dog whines and destroys stuff when they're left alone, truly alone, no other humans, free roaming. So what happens? Free roaming, that's part of how we figure out whether a dog has separation anxiety or some other issue at play there. You know, I do encourage people to work through positive crate training. You don't want to just shove a dog in a crate, close the door, and that's it. You want to spend some time building that dog up, especially if you're expecting the dog to stay in that crate for an extended period of time. We want to make sure that they're comfortable in that crate and they're not just being forced in there. And you can very easily, you know, it takes time, but you can train a dog to go into a crate on cue. what is some rescues have rules about dogs fosters must be crated. Do you guys have rules about that?
Well, we recommend it because crate training is a great skill for dogs to have, and it keeps them safe, especially when they're just brought into a new home. We don't know if they are destructive, and we don't know if they're house trained, and so confinement is really just to keep them safe. However, once, crate training is part of the deal where, yes, spend time on it, have it be a positive association, feed them in there. And eventually, if you know your foster dog and they're house trained, they're not chewing on, the electric cables or shoes or ingesting something dangerous potentially, then fine, leave them uncrated. That's kind of your choice. But more importantly, if you have a resident dog or cat, then that's a great tool to use, because we don't want the dogs just kind of free roaming together while they're not supervised. So in that case, you're going to need to invest the time in crate training, or at least having the dog in a separate room with the crate, with the door open, for example, if they're not fully comfortable, but just a way to separate them. So we do recommend it because, again, some people will wanna, when the dog is adopted, they're gonna want to use a crate for them. It's also super helpful at nighttime when you're, when the dog is, when everyone's going to sleep. I think with foster dogs, just as a way to separate them from your own resident dogs, crating is a great way to do that.
Yeah. And you did mention cats, which we have not talked about, and I don't think we have a question about that, but it is definitely worth, touching on that. If you have a cat, certainly, keeping the cat safe. You may not know if your foster has any sort of prey drive or has ever been around cats. So that is definitely an area where I would recommend high degree of management and separation there. You don't want to risk that. Actually, our foster fail dog, Boo Boo, my heart dog, her litter came up from Kentucky when we adopted her, and her brother went into a foster home, and it was a brand new foster. They had never fostered before, and they had a cat, and he ran and caught the cat, did a grab and shake, and they had to euthanize the cat. It was a really, really sad situation for the dog and for the family. They were traumatized. I don't think they ever fostered again. But that was also kind of a failure of the rescue, that they didn't counsel this brand new foster family not to assume that every dog is going to be good with cats. Just because their other dog is good with cats doesn't mean that, every dog is going to be good with cats.
Absolutely. So, yeah, and just to add to that, we do cat test most of our dogs that are arriving here from the South, actually, whenever we can. And sometimes, they pass the cat test, but it's just based on body language. But even when they pass the cat test, we still say they need slow introductions, similar to how you would introduce new dogs to the foster dogs. So.
Yeah, and I will tease that I have a dog and cat introduction blog scheduled over the next couple of weeks. So I have that coming up. It is not live yet, but I do have it scheduled to go up in the next couple of weeks. So make sure that you're following me if you are interested and you see that. Okay, next question. Also, we sort of touched on it a little bit, but more specifically, my foster is too frightened to eliminate outside and has been having accidents inside after we return from our walks. How can I help her feel more comfortable to go outside on walks? So this, we talked about at the beginning. Often they're afraid of city noises, or they're just uncomfortable, and inside tends to be a safer place for them. It's not as noisy. They feel like they can kind of go off to a corner and take care of business. So like we were talking about before, keeping things to very, very quiet areas. If you can transport that dog to a green space, a little park or a little area, if they're small enough to put them in a bag or carry them there so that they don't have to walk through the city to get to that green space. Or if you've got a car and you can throw them in a car or get an Uber and take them to a green space, often that sort of quieter, less congested area will help them feel safer to eliminate. Also, if dogs have never eliminated on the sidewalk or on concrete, they are not familiar with eliminating on that substrate, and they're going to be looking for something soft and squishy like grass or a carpet. So yes. So that, substrate that they're puttying on can be part of the problem. So if you're in the city and there's no grassy patches around you, that could be contributing to why the foster is not pattying. It's also very likely that they're just a little overwhelmed and fearful about everything that's going on. So trying to seek out quieter areas, or if they're small enough and you can set up potty pads for a couple days to see if you can transition them from that to outside once they're a little more comfortable with you. Making sure that if they do potty inside, we are not scolding them or punishing them for any reason that can actually cause what we call reverse house training, where the dog becomes afraid to potty in front of people because they've been scolded or punished for it in the past. And that is a very difficult thing to undo. So we definitely want to prevent reverse house training. Just kind of being a little understanding and trying to create an environment where the dog feels really safe. So if that means they're pottying in your apartment or house for a couple days, it's kind of a small price to pay for long-term comfort and not making that dog afraid.
Mm-hmm. And then, Kate, what would you say about just like keep taking them out, maybe trying to feed them, or would you just give them space until they're ready?
I would probably give them, depending on the age of the dog, you want to, obviously if it's a puppy, it's going to need to go more frequently than, an 8-year-old dog. So you want to obviously keep that in mind also, just sort of what's age appropriate for that dog and how frequently they should be eliminating. If it's a, 4-month-old puppy, they need to be going out every 3 hours, so they have to get on a regular potty training schedule. If it's an older dog, they can probably hold it for a little bit longer, but, in a new environment, they may need to go more frequently. So giving them ample opportunity to go outside, but being careful not to sort of flood them and overwhelm them by taking them out, into busy places. So, off-peak walks, don't take them out when everybody else is out, going or coming from work, trying to get outside when it's a little quieter, or like I said before, going to a more quiet green space and seeing if that helps. Okay. Next question. Came in from email. I want to foster, but I don't think I can handle the emotional part when the dog leaves. And there is a big emotional part. So the first couple is, like I said, we did, 50 dogs or something around that. The first couple are hard. It's a new experience for you, and you get or at least I get very attached. So it can be difficult, but I found it easier to sort of let go when I thought of it more as a job and thought, this is my job. I am sort of a cog in the machine, and it's my job to keep this dog safe. And then it goes on to the next phase of its life. I will say there was 2 dogs that we had that were long-term fosters. We had Skylar and Lacey, and they were both with us for close to 6 months independently. There's a little overlap there. And we almost foster failed Lacey. We got very close to keeping her, but my husband and I made a pact that we will never be outnumbered by the dogs. So we were not allowed. We had decided that we were not going to have 3 dogs when there's only 2 humans. So Lacey got moved to a new foster home, and she eventually did get adopted. I still keep in touch with her adopter. Skylar was incredibly fearful. She was a super fearful little puppy. She was beautiful little Chihuahua mix. And she went to an older couple who had another similar dog, and it was a lovely family in northern New Jersey. But she didn't get adopted right away because she was so fearful. And every time she went to an event, she didn't show well, and she was just terrified. She'd be sitting there shaking, and she was, so she wasn't like this bouncy little playful puppy, and she got overlooked a lot because of that. And so those dogs that are with you for a long time, of course you get attached, because they're with you for so long. And it is hard. It is absolutely hard, but it's not a reason to not foster. If you open your heart and you open your home to fosters, you will grow to love it, even if it is difficult and you cry when they go. But you know that you are part of that dog's journey to having a long, happy, healthy life ahead of them. And if you tried to foster fail every single dog, you're going to run out of resources. You cannot possibly keep every dog that you want to foster. And, you know, think about our impact. We fostered almost 50 dogs. There's no way we could have adopted all those dogs. So our impact in opening our home to be fosters helped 50 other dogs successfully find homes. And that's really, you know, the way I encourage people to think about it.
Yeah, I mean, it really is. I always try to just sort of explain how simple it is when you do, it's like 1-to-1, you have a foster in your home and you're actually contributing to rescue organizations like us to be able to pull another dog. So you're really playing such a big part in this whole chain of rescue. But also, yeah, I mean, it is hard, but there's some amazing experiences we have in life that are hard, but they're beautiful, and they're so that we can grow with them. And yeah, I mean, and also you find ways to kind of manage it as well and manage your connection to the dogs. And, you know, one of those ways for me personally is having my foster dogs sleep in their crate at night, and, you know, having my dog sleep with me in bed, because to me that's, you know, a little bit more of a bond. And so it just protects me a little more. So that's, you find ways that work for you while still being able to help a dog or a cat.
Yep. I see a question from Katie about her puppy going in the backyard and not pooping and then coming in and pooping. And that's kind of what we're talking about. I think in that situation, the dog might be fearful and inside is safer for them. So as soon as, you know, you give them an opportunity to go outside, but think about when a dog is outside, if they're afraid, in order to, you know, have a bowel movement, they need to be able to relax those muscles. And if they're anxious and tense, they're not going to be relaxed enough to let it loose. So not pottying outside is almost always, you know, an indicator that the dog is afraid of something. It could be noise, it could be, you know, environment, it could be lots of things. But, you know, sort of keep trying. And like I'm saying, you know, quiet time. So if, depending on where you're located, if, you know, it's loud in the morning or loud at night, or there's fireworks going off, if you're in Brooklyn, you know, that's not the best time to try to bring the dog out to go to the bathroom. Really trying those off-peak hours. And, you know, I have clients that wake up at 5 o'clock in the morning because they have fearful dogs and they need to get those dogs out before everybody's heading to work and commuting and all that stuff. So also, you know, with a 3-month-old puppy, they just may not be perfectly housebroken. So they may not know to go outside. So, so we want to make sure that we're properly crate training to teach the dog to hold their bladder and bowels. We want to make sure that we get them on a good routine, especially that young, you know, 3 months old. They should be going out every 2 to 3 hours. Goes out every 3 hours. Okay, great. So you're doing both. You need to do both of those things. So he should be going out every 2 to 3 hours. And if he doesn't go, when he goes outside, he goes back in the crate so that he doesn't have an opportunity to go to the bathroom inside. And then if you've gone out, he hasn't gone to the bathroom, they go back in the crate, then you try again in 30 minutes. So, we want to really reinforce that as soon as he comes out of the crate, or she, I can't remember if you said boy or girl, sorry. Yes, no accidents behind the crate. So if there's accidents behind your couch, that's not ideal. But that tells me that the dog is having an opportunity to sort of free roam and isn't being confined. So they're not really learning to hold it and to go outside in those situations. So if they don't go outside, they have to be confined so that they don't have an opportunity to go behind your couch. And then you repeat that process until they start going outside. So hopefully that helps. Next question. came in on Instagram. Should I keep taking my dog to the same grooming place where he was fostered for a month? So I would say probably that's fine. Grooming places in particular can be really stressful for dogs. So any sort of positive association that we can get for dogs going to groomers and going to vets, I'm kind of all for that. I think this person was a little concerned about whether maybe there would be some emotional damage to bring them back to the place where they were fostered. If that was a good experience for them, I don't see why that would be damaging at all. And if it's where that dog is getting groomed, then even better. Next question is about kids. So how can I safely involve my kids in fostering? I want them to participate, but not sure how much is too much. I will ask what, Second Chance's rules are about kids. A lot of rescues have rules about fosters having kids be a certain age. Certainly our goal with fostering is to keep dogs safe, but if there's kids in the home, then we definitely need to make sure that those kids are also safe. Do you have a policy on that?
Yeah, I mean, we definitely allow fosters with children of the age of 7 and upwards. And, the reality is we don't have a way to child test a foster dog because they are at a vet's office in a crate or at the shelter. And when they arrive here, they land in their foster home. So all we can go off of is basic temperament. And so, with at least kids that are a little bit older that, might be able to take direction well, we can at least go off of temperament and the adults in the home's experience level.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, we definitely love to have kids involved, especially when they're being supervised. There's no reason not to foster.
Yeah. Yeah. Kids can be scary for dogs if they haven't been properly socialized to kids at, in their critical socialization window. Kids can be overwhelming and scary for dogs. They are probably also really excited that they're going to have a dog in their house. And so their instinct is probably going to want to be all over that dog and hug it and kiss it. And that's absolutely not what should be happening. So we don't want kids hugging and kissing, even familiar dogs. I'm not a big fan of that. There's a lot of risk there to allow kids to hug and kiss dogs. Hugging and kissing is a very human display of affection. It is not at all how dogs show affection to each other. So us hugging or kissing a dog, we're getting right up in their face. We're constraining them. They're having restraint, and that alone can be scary. Restraint for a dog means they can't escape. They can't get away if they want to. So what is friendly and a display of affection for us when we hug people is restraint to a dog, and that's terrifying. So really making sure that, if you do have kids, we're keeping everybody safe, lots of kid-friendly ways for the dog to interact. So they can do things like kibble fetch, where they toss the dog's kibble like down a long hallway and the dog runs and collects the kibble, and then they come back and the kid throws some more, or alternating fetch, where the kid throws a toy, the dog goes and chases that toy, and then the kid throws another toy. So they're never trying to take that toy out of the dog's mouth, but they're still able to engage with the dog, and the dog sees this child as, a source of fun and good stuff. So there are ways to safely incorporate kids with fosters and even with your own dogs using some of these methods. But, we do want to always use some caution there. And, there's an element of dog training, but there's also an element of kid training, and like you said, those kids need to be old enough to take direction. So they need to be able to clearly understand, don't approach the dog when they have food or when they have a bone or when they have toys or when they're sleeping. And a toddler is not, their frontal cortex is not developed enough. There's nothing wrong with that child. They're just not developed enough to be able to reliably take those instructions. So certainly kids can be a great part of fostering, but it needs to be done safely for the whole family, for the dog and the humans. The last question we have is, my foster doesn't know how to use stairs. What do I do about that?
We get that a lot in the city where people live in walk-ups, and I have fosters calling me. It's like, we've been down here for 30 minutes. What do I do? So,
yeah. So using food to lure, you know, they may just not have ever experienced stairs before. So it could be scary, especially, you know, looking down at a steep staircase. If you're this dog, you're looking down, that's overwhelming. So, you know, how can we break that into smaller increments? Can we, you know, carry the dog part of the way and then see if they'll walk the rest of the way? Can we use a food lure or a treat magnet to kind of get them to follow that, and positively reinforce any sort of incremental, you know, if they lean forward or they put one paw out, like reward that, you know, break it down and incrementally reward steps towards what you're actually trying to get them to do. So even if they don't just do 2 or 3 steps on their own, but they reach a paw out, like we want to capture that and reward that behavior to show them, yes, that's what I want you to do. But if they're small enough and they're comfortable with you picking them up, you know, not forcing them, not leash dragging them up and down the stairs, and also thinking about texture. So if the stairs are wood, that might be slippery, and that could be, you know, scary for a dog, especially if their paws haven't been trimmed or groomed recently and there's lots of fur between the pads. They're not going to have the best traction on slippery surfaces. So sometimes stairs are scary because the dog feels unstable. You know, when we moved into this house, the stairs are wood stairs, and we immediately ordered stair treads and laid them down because the stairs are super slippery, and I knew that that would be scary and potentially dangerous for our senior dogs. So, you know, encouraging them positively, not leash dragging or pulling, and trying to carry them or, you know, figure out a way to help them in that process to learn how to navigate stairs.
Yeah, and I mean, that's so important to just consider that, whether it's stairs or introducing your dog to a vacuum cleaner, you know, it's kind of just these new things they're getting exposed to, and they might be afraid of it at first, but just like anything new, you know, they'll just get used to it with your help, of course, and reassurance. So don't let that discourage you, basically.
Right. I did skip a question, I'm being told, so I will go back to this question. Sorry, Kristen on Facebook. How do I put my foster on a schedule? I want to foster, but I work out of the home. So is that okay? And that's a great question. So again, depending on the age of the dog, you know, the dog, if it's a puppy, if it's a 3 or 4 month old puppy, it's not going to be able to handle a full work day locked in a crate by itself. That's just too long. It's inhumane to leave a young dog confined and alone for that long. Older senior dogs, maybe they could be left for longer periods of time. You know, if you're in a position to have a midday dog walker, if you're gone for a full 8 or 9 hours, if the rescue is open to having someone come in for that dog to have a potty break and be let out of the crate, if you're crating them, I would think that that's fine. Some rescues may have issues with having a third party come in and walk a foster dog. I could see that being a little dicey in some cases. But getting the dog on a regular schedule can be really helpful. So, you know, having a regular potty schedule and a regular feeding schedule, exercise, all of that stuff, figuring out what that schedule is. And that can be really beneficial to help the transition into their adoptive home. So if you keep track and say, this is our wake up time, this is when we go out, this is what the dog does when we go out, you know, and you have all of this information, that's really valuable for the adoptive home to try to stick to or adjust slightly that schedule, especially if it's being successful. If the dog is reliably going out and not having accidents, being kept on that schedule, that information is worth its weight in gold for a new family. So what's your opinion on having dog walkers come in and all of that?
We definitely allow that. I mean, as long as the dog walker is someone that is trustworthy, there are, you know, just run it by the foster coordinator that is your point of contact, and we would just verify who that person is and, you know, safety measures. But most people need to have a job and be in the office in order to feed the dog or care for the dog. So having to work in an office is no reason not to have a dog. You just have to plan around it. And yeah, a dog walker is a great solution to kind of help with that.
Yeah. Great. Okay. I think that's all the questions. Did I miss any in the chat? I don't think so. I don't think so. If we did, I will go back and look at the comments. When we wrap this up, I'll go back in and I'll see if there was any that we missed, and I will try to answer those in the comment thread for the video. If people have question about fostering for Second Chance, there you go. There's your shirt.
Or t-shirts at our shop on the website. Feel free to check it out.
Great. If people have questions about fostering or interested in fostering, how should they contact you?
Yeah, so go to our website. We have our foster tab, and if you're curious and you have some questions to start, you're not sure what it entails, we do have a foster FAQ that you can sort of see some of the most common questions. And then fill out a dog foster application. Just fill out the information, let us know your background and just what your experience is, and we will be in touch and match you with a suitable dog. Again, maybe a puppy is a better fit for you, but maybe an adult that has less hands-on needs, maybe, or a senior, for example. So we will support you through it. I think that's kind of the most important thing. I do want to highlight that you're not going to be on your own. We've got a support system. We've got a community of volunteers that will definitely guide you through your fostering experience. So consider fostering. We're really, really in need.
Yeah. And I think you guys are the same. Like, the foster covers expenses. So you're not paying for vet bills. You're not paying for that stuff. So, most...
The rescue covers the medical expenses.
Right.
Yes.
The rescue will cover that.
Yes.
When we fostered in New Jersey, they gave us food. Not every rescue supplies food, but, so from a cost perspective, you're giving this dog a little piece of your heart and a little piece of your home for a short period of time, but you're not going to incur major expenses by being a foster parent.
Yes.
And you will be paid back with gratitude and knowing that you've done good in the world.
Absolutely. Also, if you want to, when you buy food or supplies for your foster dog, you can also, it's tax deductible. You can add that to your, if that feels more
that feels better for you.
Yeah.
So if you are not local, which I know a lot of you are not, certainly research rescue groups in your area and consider being a foster. It's an amazing experience, and you're really doing a good thing in doing that, opening your heart and home. So, all right. Well, thank you so much for joining me tonight. It was great. We ran over a little bit, so I apologize for that, but it was all good information. If you need to find me, you can find me at rescuedbytraining.com. I'm on Instagram. I'm on Facebook. I'm on YouTube. I'm on Twitter. I'm on LinkedIn. I'm on everywhere except for TikTok. I do not do TikTok. So you can find me if you have behavior needs for your dog. Certainly reach out and schedule a session. I'm here if you need me. But if there's any other last minute questions, or if you think of something after we get off here, throw it into the comments on the video and I will try to respond to that. So have a good night, everyone. Thanks for joining us. Bye.
Thanks, everyone.